Yes, everyone, welcome back to the channel. Stephen Howson back in Blighty, and it's time for 5 things that we learned Manchester United against Burnley at Old Trafford last night. In number 1, Rashford's momentum. Rashford has now got 9 goals in 20 games. The confidence is definitely growing with him. You can see it. I mean, when was the last time you saw Marcus even attempt to nutmeg someone, let alone pull it off? He is expressing himself. He is playing with skill. Confidence is the only word I can think of for him. And that's impressive considering the treatment that he got during the World Cup. Who else, tell me, scores 3 in the group stage and then gets a couple of minutes in the knockouts? Absolute scandalous. Gareth Southgate, blood on his hands as far as I'm concerned. But Marcus has come into this season, and I think if you go back to what we were saying at the start of the season, was it Brighton at home? Ball comes in, he takes a touch and then has a shot. That's a player that's not quite confident. So physically, I think he came into the season quite sharp, having had a good pre-season, but mentally he wasn't quite at the sharpness that we've seen in recent weeks. He has got a different aura, different energy about him, and I think the last couple of months, everything's gone right for him. Love to see him kick on now, see where he can finish. Do you think he can finish with 20 goals? I absolutely think he can finish with 20 goals, and that would be a solid season getting back on the wagon after the poor 18 months that he's had. In number 2, Wan-Bissaka is alive. We actually saw him. We actually shown him putting a decent performance, and it was nice to see. I still think he's probably going to get moved on. I still think this was probably putting him in the shop window a little bit, but it was one of the best performances that we've seen from Wan-Bissaka in a long time. His assist was a great run, great technique, great anticipation. Not sure how much of it he knew. I think he was just trying to keep it in and put it in the area at some point. But he was miles better in possession. Has he been working with Ten Hag? Has he been doing one-to-ones? He wasn't completely inept going forward. I certainly don't think he's going to hit the heights that we've seen Delo hit. But I'd have told you Delo was finished at the end of last season. There might be redemption for him yet, but it'll be a backup and kind of £50 million signing. See himself as a backup. I think there's a big question mark over whether he can or not. There's a lot of talk of him going in January. Has he just improved the chances with that performance? We'll have to see. Number 3, dodgy Dubrovka. So he obviously is barely featured. Yesterday we kind of saw why. I didn't think he was great in the pre-season games. And you kind of go, well, what do we call those games? The friendlies in Spain? Fall mainly on the plane? The performances for him just wasn't there, and he was shaky. He was shaky in possession. He was shaky with distribution. He looked like he didn't know what he was doing, which is a bit worrying because he looked great prior to joining United. There's a lot of uncertainty around David De Gea's future at the club. His wages, I think, is putting a lot of pressure on the club because De Gea's going to want an increase in his wage. Ultimately, he's already the best paid goalkeeper in the world. Does he deserve to be even more the best paid goalkeeper in the world? Are United getting value for money for that? A lot of people will say, just give it him. But that sort of thinking ends up with the Sanchez scenarios where you've got one player on an absolutely bonkers wage. And ultimately, you extrapolate this enough, you end up with a situation that Barcelona found themselves in where players unworthy of contracts are sitting on some absolutely bonkers contracts. So I don't think Dubrovka is the answer. And he had an opportunity to try and put himself in the shop window to be that answer, and he ain't took it. Donny van der Beek. Is there any hope for him whatsoever? He's been training all the way through the World Cup. I cannot confirm or deny that he's had Rocky music on and his hood up, but he's been out here putting in the hours. There's a Carabao Cup game midweek. Half of the team has been at the World Cup. Some of them have been back in the country a matter of days, and he can't get a game. He didn't perform in the friendlies in Spain. He seems unable to displace even McTominay, who last night was awful. I don't know what you do with Donny van der Beek. Do you try and use him as a mate weight? Get him back in Holland and maybe see if you can use him as a bit of a mate weight to bring Cody Gakpo over? Is there an option in that? Does he need to go on loan again? Like, what do you do with him? Ten Hag is the man that previously got him to the level he was playing at, that earned him a move to Manchester United. And now Ten Hag's the guy that I think he's not worth even putting in the team against the Championship side in the EFL Cup. Man, what do you do if you're Donny van der Beek? I think he'll probably still be here post-January because the squad is thin. But I also wouldn't be surprised to see us try and move him on. I think if they can get some of the ins right, they might start looking at some of the outs, and he could be one of them. And number 5, Ten Hag is an absolute don. The presence he has around the football club is massive, and it's growing. He is steely. The performance and patterns of play are emerging. There is an expectation of performance from the players. I love his answer. Oh, can we have an update on Jadon Sancho? No. And then awkward silence, because he doesn't give a shit about the interview that you're trying to get out of him. This job hasn't been too big for him. In fact, he just looks at home. The decisions that he's been making have been almost flawless. He has proven himself to be a worthy candidate for the Manchester United job. The next stage for him is to prove that he's a worthy successor to Sir Alex Ferguson. And to do that, he's going to need trophies and he's going to need a title challenge. But the fact that we can even say that, and I don't feel silly saying it, just shows the sheer job that he has done in just 6 short months. You know, the details are what I like. The marginal gains he's talking about, bringing in Tour de France coaches. He's talking about bringing in player liaison officers. He's talking, he's actioning, moving around of the dugouts because he sees a marginal gain to be had. He's aware of everything. You better not be late for one of his training sessions. You better not refuse to come on. It doesn't matter if you're an academy player that's not yet made a first team debut or if you're the greatest goal scorer of all time. That man is the boss. And I am so excited when you think about the very real potential that we might be seeing the end of the Glazers before we see the end of 2023. And with that man in charge, people better be afraid of Manchester United again because he's a fucking don. So that was the 5 things. But of course, there's more at play here. It's a cup game. You've got a quarter-final stage now where you've got City and Liverpool. They're playing each other. One of them is going to go through, but one of them is going home. The rest of the games that are in there are extremely winnable for Manchester United. And I've mentioned this previously. The winning of the League Cup is not going to keep Erik ten Hag in a job. Plain and simple, it's not. But winning a League Cup, much like we saw with Sir Alex Ferguson winning the FA Cup, is that it can lead to greater and greater things. And it gets in that mindset of winning. And that's not a bad thing. Ultimately, it'll be judged on Champions League finishes because the club needs that for the other factors and attracting players. But I don't mind winning a League Cup. And I think it's within his grasp.
Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.